I'm just gonna see how many participants we have, 16, 17. All right. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. We're just gonna give more individuals a few more minutes to join the call, and we'll begin the presentation shortly. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you to everyone who has already joined. We're just gonna give folks just a few more minutes, maybe a couple of seconds more, just so they can log in. Thank you.
Dr. Jackson, would you like to begin? We're at 11:01. We'll give it another minute if you like.
Sure, Dr. Reynes. Good morning, everyone. It's so good to have you all join us today virtually as you all come in. I think we're at over 100 now, so I will go ahead and begin. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for your interest in the Texas Reskilling and Upskilling Education Program. We are very proud of this program at the coordinating board and just happy to have you all here with us today. For those of you all who don't know me, my name is Tina Jackson. and I serve as Assistant Commissioner of Workforce Education. And just so glad to be here with you. We have been fortunate as a part of my team. We've been fortunate to be able to have this program within the Workforce Education Division. And this will be our 4th year rolling out this amazing program that helps us to scale great work across the state of Texas. Next slide, please. So for those of you who are new to the work and to what we're doing, the Texas Reskilling and Upskilling Through Education Grant Program was established during the 87th legislative session. And so, you know, this has been a great initiative and great work. We've had many long-term supporters of workforce education engaged in this work, and we're very fortunate to be able to roll the program out again. Next slide, please. As part of this transformational work, House Bill 8 really has helped us to more effectively support and scale long-term goals that are centered around making sure that workforce education is truly a vehicle for our high school students and also our dual credit students, which in turn will lead to a stronger pathway that fast tracks students to workforce credentials of value. It's exciting times at the coordinating board. Dr. Reynes and Manny Garcia and the team in general have been doing a lot of work to prepare for today and really in general to help more institutions to scale what we're calling credentials of value, colleagues. And so there's so much to be said about this. We have a list of high demand fields that we're excited about. And we want to make sure today that we answer any questions that you all may have regarding the grant and regarding the work that we're engaged in here. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to my colleague and friend, Dr. Reynes, and I want to also publicly thank her and her team for the great work that they're doing with the TRUE program.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. I appreciate you. Next slide, please, Manny. We're going to go into some essentials about what the TRUE Grant Program is about, what the legislative effort to put it in place did, the process of applying for TRUE, what the components of an application is, the sort of the technical part of submission of an application to us, and timeline, and of course, more information or regarding any questions you may have. Please use the chat box for your questions. That's in Zoom. That's the easier mechanics of answering questions for us. And also be assured this presentation will be recorded, and the slide deck will also be available on the THECB website, and we'll show you the page and the location of that a little further down in the presentation. So as Dr. Jackson mentioned, the TRUE Grant was established during the pandemic, actually, and then developed over time from a grant program funded with federal dollars, GEAR dollars, pandemic emergency money, to state appropriated funding last year, which was very exciting. And the essentials of what TRUE is funding to expand, redesign, or create short duration, industry-aligned credential programs in high-demand occupations. So high demand or high value credential programs, which means that the selection of those credential programs that are the core of a TRUE Grant has to reflect local and regional need and has to be in partnership with different kinds of workforce stakeholders. The other part about the TRUE program that's kind of essential to know from the start is that it is data heavy in terms of data collection. Even though this grant is only for a year, we are going to be asking for data about students and the students who matriculate into the credential programs you're working on for some time into the future. So there is that very important collection and reporting process that will help inform us about the ongoing efforts that are being put to build out post-secondary workforce education in Texas. Next slide, please. There's 6 essential purposes that the legislature put in place when they authorized the True Grant program. And they're very wordy, and there are two different slides. We wanted to make sure that you saw them. I'm not going to read them verbatim, but they're really about training existing, new, or redesigned accelerated programs for in-demand skills and credentials of all different kinds in high-need occupations, to make sure that there's alignment and thoughtfulness about how those post-secondary certifications and workforce credentials are created, and that they're short, that they're 6 months or less in duration. And not only to develop, but to redesign existing programs was very important to the legislature. So say you have a program in welding, and it's actually a 9-month to 12-month effort on a part of a student to enroll and complete. Figuring out ways to shorten or accelerate the student experience to 6 months or less was one of the things in terms of both efficiencies, but also in terms of supplying the marketplace with important workers with high skills, was top of mind of legislators when they put that tenet into this piece of legislation. Next slide, please. A couple of more of these. So institutional capacity, I think that the idea was, alongside HB8, which has it's all about community college and two-year public technical institution build out, was the idea to have folks focus in on high-value post-secondary industrial certifications and workforce credentials, and tie them back to what we know to be high-demand occupations, as the Texas Workforce Commission has long done. To provide students with aid awards if necessary was another tenet of what the legislature put in. And again, to track data, to track and report on what students are doing when it comes to these new options provided by the True Grant program. Next slide, please, Manny. Okay, so who can apply for the True Grant? As we know, as I think many of you know from the announcement that came out a week ago on Monday, thank you, Manny and company, for doing that. This is a competitive grant. It's a competition grant. Applications are evaluated and ranked and awarded funds based on their ranking. Eligible applicants are all Texas public lower division institutions of higher education, that is public junior colleges, public state colleges, and public technical institutes. There are 54 of those in Texas. You could also be a consortia of 3 or more of those public lower division institutions, or you could be a public lower division institution in partnership with a local chamber of commerce, a trade association, or an economic development corporation. So a chamber of commerce, a trade association, or an economic development corporation could also hold this grant. They could be the primary grant holder, as long as they're in partnership with a public lower division institution or consortium of lower division institutions. Next slide, please. The actual awards themselves are up to $250,000 for a single institution applying, and up to $500,000 for a consortia. We have about $12.8 million in grants. The grant periods are, as I said, 12 months long. They'll be from December to December. You'll see that a couple of different times in these slides to remind you. And if you're an eligible applicant, you can apply as many as 2 times. You can apply as a single institution, and you can also apply as a member of a consortium. Next slide, please. So to really sort of hone in, this slide 10 sounds may seem a little repetitive, but it's really honing in on what you need to indicate and do in your application. And we'll have a couple of more slides about tips about what produces a really good quality application a little later on, it's also honing in on some of these same principles. But first, looking at high demand occupations, looking at what kind of credentialing supports students who are going to be going into high demand occupations as defined by our state. It's defined by Texas Workforce Commission and by THECB, our own coordinating board list of high demand occupations. The idea of planning or redesigning and expanding or creating. You can plan and redesign, you can plan and create. That's the 2 options that you're given. These courses of study that are short, 6 months or less. And this is a very important principle, focusing in on one or more highly related credential programs in those high demand occupations. So we don't want to see a list of 30 occupations or 30 credentials that you're doing. Well, unless they're all in one area. We want you to have a kind of a good, strong, tight argument around a set of credentials that are related, or a single credential, if you like, that you're going to plan, redesign, and or build. And finally, another very important principle you'll see repeated a bunch of times as we talk about this, developing that project not in isolation, not based simply on what you see in the TWC and the coordinating board lists of high demand occupations, not just what your faculty is telling you, but in addition, consultation with employers and workforce stakeholders like chambers of commerce and EDCs and trade associations. Labor market analysis that actually backs up some of these choices that you would make. And this notion of matching what you choose to what you understand regional needs are based on all that consultation and data. So this idea of really being able to make the case about why you selected what you selected in terms of your credential building project. Next slide, please. So there, as I've mentioned before, there are 2 locations where you can find the latest computations of regional and statewide high demand occupations. The first is the Texas Workforce Commission, which posts this every year. And the second is THECB's high demand occupational fields, which just got passed by our board last Thursday, actually, at our board meeting, our quarterly board meeting. Both these locations have breakdowns for regions as well as statewide high demand occupations. And so we want you to pay attention to those lists. And ideally, we want to see that you use those lists, which are rather long and comprehensive. They've got lots of options on them, that you've used those as you're thinking through both the computations on labor market demand in your region that you see, your conferences and discussions with employers and other workforce entities, that all these things are like the three legs of the stool in terms of like how you have decided what you're doing. And that's why the next bullet is, again, repetitive from what I just said, but really important. Incorporating employer partnerships in the development and decision about what you're going to do is incredibly important. It is really kind of the topper in terms of the quality and the importance of the project you pursue. And finally, we wanted to note a couple of things because we're of higher ed, right? Those programs, those credential programs that you select can be standalone, or they can be embedded into other credential programs. Remember, they're short, so they certainly could lend themselves to embed, or they could be both. We don't care whether you're doing a digital or face-to-face or a hybrid kind of credential delivery system. We want to know which ones you choose, but that doesn't matter to us. The modality of instruction is important for you all to decide, but we want to keep it open. And finally, whether or not the credential program is credit bearing or not is also up to you. And you can certainly send us a proposition that you're going to be working on credential programs that are housed in continuing education, that are not necessarily holding credit. They could be stackable or convertible to credit, but nevertheless, it doesn't matter to us what that element of the credential program is. That's your choice. Next slide, please. So workforce stakeholders themselves, as I said, can be an eligible applicant. They can actually hold the grant as long as they're in partnership with a 2-year public institution. So they can be a grantee. But workforce stakeholders play an incredibly important role in any project that's brought into the True Grant program, because the consultation process we've been talking about among employers, chambers, EDCs, trade associations, or even local workforce development boards should be folding into, again, the decision, the desiderata you have about choosing the credential programs in the critical high demand occupation areas that you're looking at. And the more you partner with workforce entities, the better. The degree of partnership matters. That's actually, as when you look at the decision criteria as we judge your proposal, you'll see that that's emphasized. The closer you are, the roles for workforce stakeholders in the project as it unfolds, that's an important element also in terms of a quality proposal and something we want to see. And so workforce stakeholders can play a variety and should play a variety of different roles. Mandatory consultation, ideally close partnership as the project rolls out, and even potentially grant holder, depending on, as long as they are one of these 3 eligible kinds of workforce stakeholders. Next slide, please. These are the allowable cost categories for a true grant. This is state money, and so it's a little less restrictive, I guess it would be the right term, than federal grants, but only slightly so. Our Texas state grant guidelines are very similar to federal at this point, and so they're pretty much the same. But the idea is that you're working on a credential program. You're working on either redesigning or creating or planning part of this as well. You're working on curriculum and mode of instruction, right? So that curriculum development, instructional software, instructional equipment, instructional facilities are all very important. Student financial aid, as we mentioned before, is allowable. Our legislature made sure to talk about that. Supporting students, intensive counseling or tutoring, that could also be done. Faculty hiring and training capacity can be addressed. And there are so many sort of off-the-shelf credential and training materials. If you're planning on buying or licensing materials, you can do that here. Project marketing and outreach costs, making sure that students and folks in your region know about the opportunity of this new credential offering or revised credential offering. Marketing and outreach are not trivial, and they do have costs associated with them. And finally, the data administration reporting that we've been talking about quite a lot, that also has a potential cost associated with it, and you can put it on your budget. Next slide, please. Right, student financial aid. So we do have a couple of caveats, but they're pretty generous considering these are very short credential programs. Any student enrolling in these specific programs during the grant period can be provided with financial aid. And that is cost of attendance, tuition, and fees. There is no stipulation about how to calculate that, whether it's a last dollar or first dollar, doesn't really matter to us. But there is a cap of $2,500 per eligible student per semester or term. So that's the one sort of constraint you need to think about, along with the idea that this is grant funding, student financial aid grant funding during the duration of your grant. So from December 24 to December 25. That makes it a kind of a limited opportunity. But if you're revising something and standing it up in the fall of 2025, you'd be good to go. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we're looking at these things, we're again, it's a little repetitive, but important. Best overall value to the state, of course. Project quality determined by evaluation criteria. Projects that exhibit priority criteria, which we'll list again in a minute. Consideration of location. The legislation actually indicates that grants to at least one eligible entity in each region of Texas, if at all possible, should happen. So if you are in a region where there aren't too many higher education institutions, by all means, you've got an advantage to some extent. And we are trying to balance quality, but also distribution of the funds across the state per the legislative intent. And finally, consideration of unique credential programs. That means brand new builds as opposed to reconfiguring things or being duplicative of existing programs. If you're going to, you can do work on an existing program, of course, that's what revision is about. But you're doing it because you're making the case that that duplication is necessary to meet regional workforce needs. So there's a reason why you want to double down on, say, some suite of IT credential or some suite of HVAC credential. So you need to sort of keep that in mind. That's something your proposal reviewers will be keeping in mind too. Next slide, please. Okay, these are the priorities. again, in the legislation and statute, proposals for new or existing consortia of 3 or more eligible institutions. So if you're going to do a consortia proposal, that gets some priority points. Projects that by single institutions that partner closely with workforce entities. So the degree, we were talking about that before, the degree of tie-in to workforce stakeholders is very important. Projects that feature affordable options for students. So those projects that you say are going to not only give financial aid, maybe you're going to provide subsidies for tools, required tools or equipment or uniforms that students may need, for example. And you state that as a purpose of this project. And finally, projects that focus on serving displaced workers. That's a very important item. It's a reflection of the pandemic, but it still certainly is important to think about today, particularly in different regions of the state. Next slide, please. And this is the breakdown of what the reviewers and how the reviewers will rate and then rank your proposal. There are the core elements about the importance of the selection of the credential programs you do, a description of what you're going to do, and a logic model, which we'll talk about in a second. Your capacity to get the work done. Don't skip this little piece. You need to see what in essence is your experience level. It might be a former True Grant. It may be another kind of credential build out or credential engagement. And then that your budget is aligned with project costs, so that you put in a budget that reflects what you're proposing to do. The bonus points, as we just said, are consortia, whether it's a consortia or not, what the degree of partnership with workforce, affordability for students, and displaced workers, as I said. So a total possibility of 44 points. Next slide, please. I'm going to throw this now to my colleague, Manny Garcia, who's, I think many of you may know, and is our project and grant coordinator for True. Take it away, Manny.
Thank you, Sherry. Well, good morning once again, everyone. And for those who I've met already, yes, Manny Garcia, I am overseeing this grant project through and through with the help of Dr. Rennes. And part of our role is to also ensure that we are very accessible to you guys in reference to material that's coming in through the inbox or is submitted via our hub. And I'll get to that in a minute. But one of the important aspects of our role is to, again, remain visible. And it's very important for us to always remain accessible in case you have questions or concerns regarding the grant. And one particular piece we are really, really happy about is that we do have a hub where we contain and have all this material for you. But at the same time, I also want to share our webpage, which in case you are not familiar with our webpage, this will be provided to you in the slide deck, obviously. So you can always save it on as one of your favorites. And, in case we have information to disseminate, this will probably be one of the places that you'd want to come to first. Well, it just depends on what you're more comfortable with, because the hub serves the same purpose. And if you can see from this information here, it'll provide general information about the grant. It'll contain the request for application, which is the RFA. And if you were to come here, just click on this and it'll take you immediately to the RFA itself, which again, if you want to have a copy of this, you would have to click and save it and make it accessible in your own desktop, okay? So again, this is just the browser version. The True application packet for 2024 would be located right here. You want to click on that, and I'll go over this in a minute in the other slide, but I just wanted you guys to just see that this actually is working, okay? Because oftentimes I'll get a message, man, the link isn't working, so I have to hop on that and get that done immediately. So in case you have any technical issues, again, I'm the person you want to be reaching out to. Our contact information is also provided here in the web page itself. Any other information that we will, I guess, be advertising or promoting or just simply putting in one place, it will actually be located here as well. So this webinar will also be located here, okay? The slide deck would also be located here in this place. So If you have any information regarding the webpage, let me know. Any feedback, please reach out to us. But once again, this is the place where, you know, you would be receiving information regarding the True 2024 grant. The True Grant Hub. Okay, so we are very proud of this hub. We've been really, you know, building on it for the past couple of years. For those of you who have received this grant previously, you know how much this has kind of changed, but we try and improve this for the best and for the better of our users. Oftentimes we do encounter some technical issues, but for the most part, it seems to have really helped out with submissions of reports, and it's just the central location where we keep and store all of our materials regarding the True. And there we go. All right, so you see what I mean? Anyway, I'm happy it opened up for us. So okay. So yeah, this is the central location for our information regarding the RFAs or the True Grant application. We also have forms such as interim report forms and other stuff that we're working on. One that recently came up has also been the annual data request information. But for the most part, this is where you would also come in and review and also just follow the instructions to the best of your knowledge, and you know, just kind of become familiar with this place. We don't want to say that this is a dashboard. It's more of a hub where we keep and store everything, right? But we're hopeful that it makes things easier for you as a user or for the individual who will be submitting their application packet. For that, you would have to come to this upload link to the left, click on this. It'll open the submission form. You would obviously enter your institution name. If you are going to be applying as a single grant, select single grant. If you're going to be partnering up with other institutions, go ahead and click this. Now, please note that if you do indicate that you're going to be working with several partners, let's say, for example, 3 other institutions or organizations, you would have to identify the organizations here. You request the amount, the name of the official or actually the authorized person or the contact individual, the contact person, their email, and oftentimes the person who will be submitting the application does not necessarily have to be the same person who is the contact. All right, so we're aware of that. Some of the things that we're making different this time around is also that we're also requesting the information from your financial officer or your CEO, CFO. That information would be entered right here. Now, if you do select 3 institutions or possibly 4 that you're going to be partnering up with, we are going to request the information for the contact individual and their financial officer as well. And that's for each individual school. If you have more questions or concerns regarding that, please let me know. Over to the left, you'll see the application form itself. You click on this. This is a downloadable version. So what you would do is you would save it as a copy for yourself on your desktop. That's when you will begin entering the information. Yeah, so again, we made it where the form itself also has the links as well. So that way, as a user, you don't get lost along the way. The budget request form is also available in an Excel sheet. Now, it's very important that, well, please just don't modify the form. Please don't remove the column or generate more rows. Please use the template as it is provided to you. For us, it's easier that way. We use Data Shuttle to offload information. So what that means is we capture and collect information from these columns and fields. If they are moved or warped in any way, it makes it difficult for us to capture that data that you're submitting. Just makes it easier for us. So we'd really appreciate it if this form isn't modified or changed. The credential roster form, the same thing. It does have certain fields, and we do use this template to offload data that you're submitting. There are not that many fields, right? So we're looking at about maybe, I don't know, about 9, maybe 11, okay? So once again, here you would enter your primary institution name, whether or not you're a consortium, and then enter the credential program that you're proposing right in this area here. So we have about 10 columns available. If you need more, please go ahead and enter more. But I think this would be, the number that we're kind of going for right now. Okay. The project model form, we do provide a sample for you. As you can see here, all this information is provided to you in the hub. And if you do have more questions or concerns regarding this particular field, where we're going to discuss it in a few minutes. But yeah, so this is our project model form. Again, it is a downloadable, accessible version for you, so you can just download it to your desktop, enter the information, save it, and then load it up to the submission form. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So we have a checklist here. Please feel free to select the boxes once you have organized and collected all of your forms. We would really appreciate it if each of these files were uploaded individually or separately. It just makes it easier for us when we're reviewing the material. So we really just encourage you to submit them separately. So that would mean one application form, one budget request form, one credential roster form. And now, as far as the letters of support, if you do have those can be combined into one document. But again, for us, it's just easier to have all of these forms separately. And once you're ready to submit, you would click on this button. You would be notified that the submission form has been submitted successfully. If for whatever reason something happens or you don't feel like it went through, you don't have to resubmit all the application again. Reach out to me. I'll verify whether or not that application has come through, and I'll let you know if everything was submitted successfully. If it wasn't, then yeah, we would ask you to submit the paperwork once again. So. Yeah, then once again, if you guys have any concerns or questions regarding the hub or the web page itself, please let me know. Again, yeah, now over to Sherry.
Thanks, Manny. Next slide, please. So we're going to just mention the logic model form that you just saw as one of the pieces of the application packet. Just for those who may not be familiar with a logic model or with the way we've set it up, it's just basically it's a depiction. It's a visual chart, if you will, that shows all the different kinds of things that you've got in hand, that AKA inputs, what you're going to do and when, that's the activities and timeline, and the short, medium, and long-term outcomes you hope to get from each of those inputs. And so, Manny, if you go to the next slide, we've got the definitions of each of those items right there as well. This is what it looks like. It's a very simple matrix. At the bottom, we've got some examples of different kinds of inputs, different kinds of activities, different kinds of outputs, and different kinds of short, medium, and long-term outcomes that you might want to consider there. It's a model. And then I think also in the logic model packet that Manny just showed you, we actually have a sample filled out of a logic model form. We didn't ask for a separate timeline, so it's important to fill this out properly and thoughtfully with time in mind over the 12-month period of the grant. It's important that this logic model reflects what you wrote up in the narrative, your project of your project, so that they match, and also, of course, matches your budget. That's one of those things our reviewers look at carefully. Next slide, please. This is the timeline. So we announced last Monday, we're having our informational webinar today. You have until September 4 to send us questions. And the deadline is September 9th, which I believe is a Monday, September 9th, 2024. We plan to let grantees know the status of their application in October and start the grant period in early December of 2024. Next slide, please. Okay, here we are with our tips and trades, and Manny and I will probably tag team this one a little bit. So again, we emphasizing like what we're really looking for. You've seen how the points are allotted. You've seen what the principles are behind the program and the reasons why the Ledge organized it the way they did. This is what the reviewers are going to be looking at or thinking about as they read what you put down and look at the information that you've got. Robust use of labor market information, right? You're going to cite TWC, THECB, other kinds of labor market information that you looked at when you were deciding on your credential program. You are going to describe, and we're going to be looking for how you consulted with workforce stakeholders, as we've been talking about, and the degree of workforce partnership that you envision as the project goes forward. So the more employer partnerships are deployed or involved in what you want to do, the better. That's a better proposal. And again, one credential program or a small set of closely related sets of programs in a high demand occupation. I cannot emphasize that more. Our form gives you as many as 10. That's not the guideline. Do think about one or a small set of credential programs. You only have a year, and we want you to be successful and really go deep on some things. So please be very strategic about what you choose and think about it in terms of what can be accomplished in a year. Next slide, please, for some more tips. Budgeting, necessary and reasonable project costs. The necessary and reasonable is the state and federal standard for budgets for grants. Be sure to check with your internal legal and sponsored project teams if you have questions about different kinds of expenses that you think may not be allowable or could be allowable. In the request for applications in the RFA, we have a list of allowable costs and some mention of what is not allowable cost. Pay attention to that, of course. But if you have any question at all, first you go to your internal folks. You can also ask us. You can also send an email to True at highered.texas.gov, and we can also respond on the allowability issue. Again, make sure your logic model is reflective of what you described, both in terms of your project narrative and your budget. And, getting those up to 5 letters of support or partnership agreements with institutional and workforce partners is really interesting, because if you're doing a consortia, that shows more information about like the intent and thoughtfulness around the consortium arrangement. More about that in a sec. If it's with workforce, you're sort of doubling down and showing us that you did consultation, that you did really talk to folks, and they really did provide input to you. So it strengthens your case for the degree of workforce partnership that you've undertaken. Next slide, please. Consortium proposals, as I mentioned. Okay. Be sure to think about this one carefully. It's not a partnership of convenience. This is about trying to pinpoint a common regional approach or a single high demand occupation strategy that a couple of different institutions want to do together, right? So you have to have a well-articulated rationale, and you're going to ground your rationale in that common regional approach and/or that strategy around a single high demand occupation. And it's 3 of you or more, right? Tell us why you decided to join together. That's the criteria for selecting partners. Why did you all decide to join together? And be sure to talk about each member's commitment and specific responsibilities. There is that section about capacity. That's where you can talk about that if you like. But it's a good place to actually put information about your members' commitment and specific responsibilities. But I think there's a couple of different places in the application packet where you can detail that, and it's important to do so. Consortia are some of the boldest and some of the most then I don't want to say audacious. They're just really wonderful vehicles to get a lot accomplished in a short amount of time, and to have a higher impact on a region in particular. So they excite us very, very much. But we're looking for we're looking for thoughtfulness and real configuration, real alignment among consortia for what they're doing and what you're proposing to us that you want to do with these true dollars, $500,000 for a year. So we want to see thoughtfulness and intent. Next page, please. Here we are, questions. I've got Dr. Jackson and Manny and I on the line for this one, and we're going to look at the Q&A or chat to see if there's anything here that we can answer off the cuff, but you can feel free to continue to write those questions and we'll respond to them. If we don't know an answer, we'll go find out and we'll get back to you. If you're not anonymous, we can actually literally send you an email, which we will do. So Manny, do you want to start going through some of the Q&A and see what we can respond to?
Yeah, hello, Natalie Johnson. She's really just said hello. Adriana Weber, good morning. Is a vocational nursing program eligible?
Well, if it's on your high demand occupational list for your region and it's 6 months or less, yes.
Next question. If we are an approved institution with Texas Workforce Commission, are we still eligible?
So not exactly, no. So TWC recognizes workforce entities, workforce stakeholders of different kinds for different purposes. In this legislation, it stipulates that only chambers, economic development corporations, and trade associations can be grant holders for TRU. So if you are not in any of those three categories, you're not eligible for TRU. You could become conceivably a partner with a public or junior college or technical institution, perhaps receive a share of the funds as a subrecipient, but you can't be a primary stakeholder, a primary grant holder, just because you're recognized by TWC.
Next question. If a college were the lead and working in partnerships with its EDC, it's a workforce board and its chamber as well as 2 employers, would that be considered a consortium, or is that a single college only?
That's a great question. And that is by our definition, a single college only that's partnering with an EDC and the chamber and these other institutions. So you'd be getting a single grant if you're as the primary grant holder. But good on you. That sounds like the great configuration.
Are dual credit students eligible for financial aid?
Great question. So that's a local institution decision. So if you are, the credential programs are going to be run by the higher education institution. If dual credit students are allowed to enroll in them to get a credential, then conceivably they could be eligible for financial aid. But if your institution has a different policy around financial aid and financial aid for dual credit students, that would rule. So it's really, the answer is we don't have any objection to it as long as that student is enrolling in the credential program you're working on during the grant period. But your institution may have other kinds of policies to keep in mind.
Thank you, Sherry. Linda,
They're coming in.
disregard
Awesome.
a question. Can we provide the link in the chat so we can save it? We don't have this slide deck in a browser version, so it would, I would have to create one first, and there's some technical things that I have to do first to the slide deck before I can issue it. So let me just work on that, and you should have it before the end of the week for sure. Next
Okay,
question
it's keeping on going down.
Alicia Hodge. If our institution is interested in developing a CDL or other professional driving credential, is equipment such as truck an allowable cost?
It is.
Yes. Yes.
I see the next question is, for whom might we seek letters of support? Well, there are a couple of ways to think about that, as I think we alluded to, but let's spell it out. If you're going to be doing a consortium, and it's really important, I think, to do early planning and thoughtfulness about that up front before you actually get the grant. Maybe you've created a basic memorandum of understanding between you and the consortium partners. Put that in as your letters of support. If you have, and hopefully you have, consulted with employers, consulted with chambers, consulted with other workforce stakeholders, and you want to further document their participation and their endorsement of the project, those would be appropriate letters of support as well. I hope that answers your question. If not, if you have something particular in mind, don't hesitate to contact us.
Okay. Yeah,
And-
okay, so there's a,
Okay,
it seems like okay.
a very long question.
Yeah,
So, okay, so where are we getting to? There are many funding sources available for the top three fields, and not so much for the other two. What evaluation approach? And so I think this is the key point of the question. Good question. What evaluation approach THECB will use to make the evaluation to apply equally to all high demand fields? There seems to be plenty of funding sources for those that are among the top three. It's a really cool question because it's suggesting that we may have a preference for higher ranking versus other kinds of high occupation. We don't. The criteria is that you're on that list, that the high value occupation is on that list. As you saw in the way we are scoping out and evaluating the proposals, we're not giving extra points for particular kinds of occupations or particular things that are higher on the list for TWC or THECB or lower on the list. That's not the consideration, as long as it's on the list. So that's again on your institution or you and your partners as you're selecting what kind of venture you want to engage in. All right, so we have a clarification. Right. So Manny, can you scroll down a little bit more? I'm not sure exactly what the question is
What was the
around.
second part, Sherry? I'm
Second
sorry
one?
for that one question that you.
Okay, can sister colleges among colleges? No. There's only one actually one college district in Texas presently, public, that has independently accredited colleges, but they're all part of one division. All the other institutions that would organize that way have now reorganized into a single accredited institution. So no, your sister college is and or you are applying, and you all have to sort it out and decide who's going to apply as a single, who's going to apply in consortia, and the two of you together don't make a consortia. Okay, that answers that question. Let's see now. Second year funding. So we don't have a category for present grant holders, those who have true 2023 grants, to continue their projects this year. So that's not an option. As a 2023 grantee, you do have the option of extending your grant a little bit if you're finding difficulty completing your project. But this is not, there's not a sort of situation for second year funding. However, with that said, if you have a project that's distinct and stems from your first year of true grant holding, you could submit that, but it's a new project, right? It's a next iteration, a next stage, a next sequence of grant activity. So that's allowable. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, once again, send us an email. We can have a conversation or back and forth on email about that one. Yes, continuing education credentials are absolutely part of the program. We're calling them continuing education credentials now at THECB in concordance with HB 8 and the way community college funding is calling them. We used to say non-credit. Non-credit's kind of a weird non-term term. So yes, the answer to that is yes. Are apprenticeship programs eligible? Okay, so this is interesting. This is a program for credential program building, right? And if an apprenticeship, conceivably, I mean, I think it would depend on how you locate the apprenticeship opportunity within your project. If the whole point is just apprenticeship, I don't think that it sort of makes the mark. If it's an apprenticeship that ends in a licensure or certification, that could conceivably be called a credential program, but there aren't a lot of them that are actually like that. But an apprenticeship embedded in a project, perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. It's another example of workplace learning that's an employer workforce stakeholder engagement, and that would work. I hope I answered your question. It's a little bit semantic. All right, school status as a TFC career school and college is not considered a public junior college. That's right. And you're not eligible. And you're not eligible for funding through TRUE, basically. Are there any restrictions for allocating all funds to student financial aid? No, I wouldn't recommend it though. Think about this. The project is about trying to build out your capacity as to offer students short-term credentials of value, right? And one of the things, tools in your toolkit is certainly student financial aid. But if all you want to do is support students with your project, then it doesn't really meet the mark of what True is about. It's not really building your capacity. You're supplementing funding that you're giving to students only. So just student financial aid, you know, you'd have to make a case, and I'm a little dubious that actually suits the point of True. It's certainly a component of it, potential things that you can do, but it's not the only purpose of True is student financial aid. All right, if a college system consists of 3 sister colleges, can all 3 apply separately? If not, what's the reason? Okay, once again, there's only one college district in Texas that got the situation where it's sister colleges. All the others, big ones that have consolidated, I'm thinking Lone Star, I'm thinking Dallas, for example, as 2 examples. You're applying, you have two shots at applying, and you all have to work it out who's going to apply if you're going to be going the college route. If you're Alamo, you have 2 shots at it. College from Alamo, you have 2 shots at it, similar. I hope that clears that up. Can we use the True tuition to offset costs of dual enrolled FAST eligible students? I don't know. That's a new question because FAST is a new program. We'd have to look into that. And the word offset is also throwing me a little bit. If it really truly means rather than using FAST dollars, I'm not really sure. Because I'm not as familiar with the stipulations FAST, the use of FAST money for dual, as perhaps I should be. So we'd have to look into that question. Not really sure about the answer to that. And if you send us an email, we'll be able to send you a response because you're anonymous. Can an IHE partner with just a business? Yes, absolutely. You can partner with a business. You're going to get a single grant. If you're partnering with, we call them employers. If you're partnering with an employer, that's all good. It's part of what drives you. That's fine. All right. So you are a private career college, San Antonio College of Fire Academy and training, and you're not eligible for this grant. That's the bottom line. I want to make sure you understand that. Yeah. If you were part of one of the public institutions, you could certainly apply for this thing. If you're, we've had True Grants to Fire programs before, fire and policing programs before, that wanted to expand and to basically try to get some money to invest in some of the very expensive instructional infrastructure you need. So we've done that before, but you in specifically are not eligible, but institutions that want to do fire, certainly, if it's on your list for regional high demand occupations, you're good to go. Any other questions? They're coming on in.
We have a question of, is there a grant max dollar amount? Sure.
There is. So if you're a single institution, it's $250,000 for 12 months. If you're a consortia of 3 or more institutions, it's $500,000 a month. We
have that in the slide deck. I'll go ahead and send that out.
Sure. All right. We have another question from Anonymous. Okay, so can you scroll down a little bit more, Manny? I can't see the entire question. So this is a question of a follow-on grants as well, again, under Q&A. Can you, there we go. So what you're suggesting is that your institution worked on a particular kind of credential program in CDL, and now you want to work on a similar kind of credential program for mechanical mechanics or mechanical whatever. The answer is yes. That's a different project. It's a new project. So you want to continue to build capacity in a different occupational field. As long as it's in a high demand field, that's perfectly fine. No. Well, depends. I'm going to say it depends. You've already got funding for your CDL program. If you're going to propose that you want to continue to work on expanding and improving your CDL program, you have to make a really good case that you're going to do something beyond what you've already done for your grant. It's not an ongoing funding situation as a second year grant. We don't have that follow-on second year, so to speak. You're applying for, and there's another aspect of your CDL program that you want to work on. Make that case. Okey doke. Really appreciate the questions, everybody. Thank you so much. They're good ones. And as I said, we're eager to help you. So don't hesitate to contact us, and anything we've not hit during this informational webinar, we will follow up with. Dr. Jackson?
Thank you all so much for coming, and greetings to all of my colleagues. A couple of them said hello to me. Look forward to seeing you all this upcoming school year. And we definitely appreciate all the great work that you are doing across the state of Texas. Once again, reach out to us directly if you have any follow-up questions, and you will definitely receive an email with the slide deck and also the recording. So have a great day. Make sure to take a lunch break, colleagues, and we look forward to seeing all these great applications.
Sherry, we have one question. Would you like to help me address it? Do you have it? Oh, you're on mute, Sherry, sorry.
Hi, so it looks like you're asking about a situation where a training opportunity with a partner in a non-credit situation is going on, and that training will not result in a credential. That is not true. So true is about students having a credential at the end of their engagement with you. So if it's just purely a training engagement with a partner without a credential associated with it, not true. And then we have another person who wants to know about the fast dollars. Such a great question. Thank you for raising it. Both of you who raised it. We will definitely research that and be able to respond to you on that one. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
And we need to stop recording.